Here we're on the draw. Pretty happy to keep this. Got some of our... got a medium hand for our deck. We have Ancestral Vision on turn 1, which is nice. It looks like our opponent is leading off on Mana Vault, so that could be bad. It's a pretty powerful card to start off with. We're gonna just Ancestral Vision, suspend that, and preordain next turn, presumably. But if our opponent has a way of taking advantage of all of this mana that they have access to, there's a lot of powerful cards in the cube. Let's just say that. So, preordain here. So, Library of Alexandria and Mountain. Those are two very interesting cards to see on top. I'm actually inclined to want both of them, because we just want lands. We only have one other land. So we could play the library here and then activate it on our next turn if we want to. But just instead going to play Steam Vents and pass the turn here. Next turn we can play Mountain and hold up Dualcaster Mage or Electrolyze. And we're going to be drawing plenty of cards once this Ancestral Vision comes off suspend. So it's more of a matter of what is this our opponent's tapping a lot of mana for. So the Mana Vault is going to make 3. Now the Golgari Signet is getting tapped. So it looks like the colors in our opponent's deck are questionable, because we're seeing blue-red lands and then the Signet and the Mana Vault. So this is actually a pretty typical situation for the cube. Alright, here's Pestermite. So that can actually untap the Mana Vault. Or an island, okay. And we'll see what the follow-up here is. It's going to be Jace. So our opponent could have Splinter Twin in their deck. At the same time, just going ahead and electrolyzing away Jace Beleren is something that I'm definitely interested in doing here. We could also just go 1 to Pestermite, 1 to Jace. But I think the likelihood our opponent has a twin right now is low. So, with all that taken into consideration, I think I'm just going to get rid of this Jace now. Because if our opponent pluses Jace and each player draws a card, that's a lot more profitable to our opponent than it would be to us. Because we're going to be drawing plenty of cards. We're not worried about that. So our opponent is going to untap this Mana Vault, but this is going to leave us a good opportunity to actually play Ralzeric, a card that I have mixed feelings about. We could also activate the library, but would rather get this Ralzeric into play, I think. And just going to get rid of the Pestermite. It's a scary card. We've seen it, our deck, pull off the combo, and we've got one of the pieces already in hands. We've got half of it. So just going to get that thing off the table. Seeing it and red lands, got to assume that our opponent has Splinter Twin. Might or might not be true. Alright, so here is the Ancestral Vision. So, yep, our Ancestral Vision, it's going to come off suspend here. We could elect to copy it with Dualcaster Mage, so that's one option that's available. Or we can just draw 3. I think it's it's a close decision. If we play the dual caster, it might just be overkill. So yeah, just gonna draw the 3 cards off the ancestral. And it looks like our opponent has a counter spell, so now now we definitely want to stop that counter spell from happening. So we can dual caster mage, and it doesn't really matter which one we go after between these two. So we can copy the counter spell and counter the counter spell, or we can copy the vision itself. But this way we draw the cards first, and it did get countered, so we're going to be able to activate the library this turn, which is nice. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there's a Scalding Tarn. So in terms of what we want to do with the Ralzeric, we could just cash it in here and get rid of the Lutero Core. And that would just prevent our opponent from drawing an additional card. So I think I'm going to do that. This game is looking really good, and I just don't want to allow our opponent to draw extra cards unnecessarily. So if we're able to untap here, which it looks like is going to be the case, we've got Cryptic Man, now we have Goblin Dark Dwellers, so just a ton of options. Start by getting in with the Dual Caster Mage. And I'm going to play out our planes. So, I think we can just leave up Cryptic here. But there's also arguments to... Yeah, I'm just going to leave up the Cryptic here. We're in such a good spot with so many cards in hand. Just hard to see how we could possibly lose. So if our opponent's passing, we can draw a card up the library, untap, and I think now... I mean, we're in such a good spot right now. I think we can just jam Chandra if we want to. Sure. Let's try for a Chandra. Flame Color. Alright. That allowed our opponent to Cryptic Command us, but now that card is out of our opponent's hand, and I think we're okay with that. We've got so many resources at our disposal. But our opponent is playing a blue control deck similar to ours, is what it looks like. And we can actually start using these man lands if we want to try to close the game out. Because we've got basically too many cards at this point, if that's possible, which it clearly it is. It is possible. So I think I like going for Compulsive Research now. Holding up the mana for Cryptic Command. And so now we're actually going to be discarding to hand size. But that's okay. Basically lands that we don't really need. We know that our deck is pretty threat light. So this could be a matchup where we feel the need to make some adjustments after sideboard. And there's a dig through time. I think we want to just cast that here. And that's going to allow us to basically go through almost all of the rest of our deck. Alright, so plenty of good stuff here. I'm going to grab the Pestermite and a Restoration Angel. We've got Splinter Twin in hand, so Pestermite, it's a quick route to victory. And there's a Crater's Claws, so that's another way for us to close this game out. And we've also got a Needle Spires, so I kind of like firing up the Needle Spires here and holding up Cryptic Command and Pestermite potentially as well. So it looks like our opponent's going to take this. Okay. So I'm pretty happy to pass the turn here. And we're in such a good spot that we're discarding good cards. So Wandering Fumarole and Searing Blaze gone. Now, actually, now that our opponent's passing, we can draw off the library and then go for the Pestermite. It looks like our opponent does have a response here. So we'll see what that's going to be. It looks like a lot of mana is going to get tapped. Alright, Torrential Gearhulk, that's pretty good. That's going to be able to counter the Pestermite. So we'll see what modes our opponent elects to use. It's going to be counter and return. So, alright, there's the Needle Spires going back to our hand. So, few different options here. I think we could just go for... I think I just like going for Sower of Temptation to grab this Gearhulk and then serve in here with the Dualcaster Mage. And our opponent's down to 6. I think we're in a good spot. We've got Mana Leak available. We've got Restoration Angel available. Not Cryptic Command, but that's okay. And now we see the library, so we know what our opponent's up to. We're up to a very similar strategy. But this could be a big play here. Our opponent's tapping a lot of mana. And it is a big play. Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. So that's going to go after the Sower and the Gearhulk. I think I want to try for a Restoration Angel here. So I'm going to blink the Sower. Sower comes back. We can then retake the Gearhulk. And now this Ulamog trigger is going to resolve, but it's not going to really do anything, and we can just swing for lethal with multiple counters backup with Creator's Clause, so that is going to do it for the game. So looking at our sideboarding options, we know we're against this blue control deck of our opponents. So not sure that we can actually rely on Splinter Twin in this matchup. I don't think we can. Just because of the counter spells, the removal. It's going to be hard for us to actually be able to combo our opponent. So I'm going to board out the Splinter Twin. And I could see actually bringing in Kargan for this matchup. Seems like a fine choice. We could go to some of the black cards if we wanted to. Colligan's Command and Painful Truce are pretty attractive, specifically the Colligan's Command, because we saw a Mana Vault. So I think I like boarding that in. We can then board in a Temple, take out a Mountain, and even board in a Swamp, because our mana is pretty good. So we can board in one Swamp in order to make room for this Colligan's Command. And since we're taking out the Splinter Twin, I think Pestermite can go. It's going to put us at less creatures, but I think this is okay. Yep, going to submit this. So here we've actually got both of our suspend cards. So feels like we've had Ancestral Vision turn 1 a lot, which is lucky. But our opponent has turn 1 Mana Vault, so that's in many ways better. But we could suspend Riftwind Cloudskate. I'd rather suspend the Ancestral, though, here. And that's going to mean that potentially the Cloudskate and the Ancestral are going to come into play are going to come off suspend the same turn. But our opponent's playing a control-ish deck, which makes the Mana Vault a little bit less good, just because there's not quite as many permanents our opponent can put into play. Most of our opponent's cards are counters, are big spells. We did see Ulamog, so that is going to be one of the reasons why the Mana Vault is very good. And here we've got an opportunity to try to get this Ralzarek into play if we want to. And that is a option. So I'm going to discard the island to the Mox, and then I think run out the Ralzarek. If our opponent has a counterspell, we just live with the results of that. Alright, there's counterspell itself. But we want to free up we want our opponent to use their counterspells so that hopefully we can get this Ancestral to resolve, because we really need more gas. That's what we're missing with this hand. So there's a Delver. It's better than a land. It's not our best draw by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll definitely play it, hope to flip it. Although it looks like our opponent's has other plans. Here's a Vendilion Click. So we'll see actually if our opponent targeting themselves with the Vendilion Click. Alright. So Goblin Dark Dwellers is what our opponent's putting on the bottom of their deck. Interesting. So this is a mirror match as close as you can get to a mirror match, really. Here's a Jace Beleren. So our opponent's gonna pick up a card here. So now we're going to try to get this Ancestral to resolve, hopefully. Alright, it is going to resolve, and we picked up some good ones. So the big question now is, what do we do with this Riftwind Cloudscape? We don't go after the Vendilion Click. I think we don't have great targets for the Riftwind Cloudscape. Unfortunately, I think we just go after a land here, actually. So bounce a mountain back to our opponent's hand, and unfortunately, no reveals here with the Delver. Just a Scalding Tarn. So we can attack Jace. So let's go ahead and do that. So that's gonna put Jace down to 1, and we can follow up here with Goblin Dark Dwellers on Ancestral Vision, which is really powerful. And it looks like that's going to happen. So now we finally have more spells to work with. And I think we're in a good spot. Despite drawing a lot of lands, we're putting the pressure on that we want to. And our opponent's now forced to completely cash in this Jace Balerion. So I like the choice to bounce the mountain with the Cloudscape and just try to slow our opponent down a little bit. Here's a Boros Signet, so we're not going to be able to reveal that to the Delver. But what we can do is draw a card now off Library of Alexandria. And I'm going to go ahead and play the Scalding Tarn out there. And I like having counter magic up. I don't even think we need to play the Boros Signet, so just going to pass the turn. And here's a fact or fiction. I think we want to Cryptic Command that. Don't see a real good reason to let this one resolve. So yep, just gonna go for a counter draw here on the Fact or Fiction. And we still have Mana Leak available. So there's a Spell Pierce, but we can actually pay for that. Although, alright, it looks like our opponent was actually spell piercing their own Fact or Fiction. Alright, that's awkward. To stop us from drawing the card. Alright, well, I guess should have realized that what was going on. Now we don't have the Mana Leak, access to the Mana Leak anymore. So our opponent's got 5, 8 lands, so still away from Ulamog, and it looks like we're not going to get punished. And there's Call Against Command. That's a great one to pick up, so we can reveal that. And now we can actually just blow up this Mana Vault. which is exactly why we boarded in the Colligan's Command in the first place. I'm going to draw another card off library. There's a Searing Blaze. And we're in a really good position. Our opponent's only got 2 cards in hand, so rather than returning the Riffling Cloudscape, we can actually just make our opponent discard with the Colligan's Command. And then blow up the Mana Vault for sure. We're definitely blowing up the Mana Vault, so yep, just gonna go for discard and then destroying the Mana Vault. And this could be the game here, although it looks like our opponent has a Gear Hulk, but we can actually just mana leak that. So the play was Gear Hulk and the attempt to get back Counterspell, but now the Colligan's Command is gone. We actually got the Ulamog out of our opponent's hand, and this game is over. This game is over. Our opponent's got 1 draw step, essentially. And there's the swamp we boarded in, but yeah, I mean, alright, I guess our opponent... Alright, it's not over. Why did I say it was over? Why did I say the game was over? Of course. Our opponent has Deceiver Exarch. We've got to assume has Splinter Twin in their deck, but at the same time, our opponent doesn't have double red. So, I still believe this game is over. And as a safety measure, let's get this Revelark into play. We could actually evoke it, get back Riffling Cloudscape, and I guess that is a powerful line. We could get back the Cloudscape, bounce Goblin Dark Dwellers. Nah, I'm just gonna play the Revelark. If somehow our opponent does something crazy, then more power to them. But actually, yeah, if we pay 1 mana, we could have gotten the Cloudscape back. But that's gonna be the match here.